Breaking, Trump just called for immediate investigation into shocking death of big liberal's young intern. This is horrifying, by Al Waisman for freedomdaily.com. President Donald Trump, an early morning tweet suggested that frequent unhinged critic ex-Florida Congressman Joe Scarborough, who is now the host of NBC's Morning Joe, killed one of his interns back in 2001. Back when Joe Scarborough was a Republican congressman for Florida, 28-year-old Lori Klausustis, who was one of his interns, was mysteriously found dead in his Florida district office. There is no proof that Scarborough had anything to do with it, but the case grew cold and accusations started to fly. According to Scarborough, the official story was that Klausustis died after hitting her head on a desk when she fainted while alone in Scarborough's Fort Walton Beach, Florida office. But soon after her death, allegations spread all over the internet that Scarborough had indeed been involved, although according to investigators there was no obvious evidence of foul play. But it's notable to mention that in 2003, Scarborough joked about the incident with Don Imus on the Imus radio program, and Donald Trump tweeted, "So now that Matt Lauer is gone, when will the fake news practitioners at NBC be terminating the contract of Phil Griffin? And will they terminate low ratings Joe Scarborough based on the unsolved mystery quote that took place in Florida years ago? Investigate." Joe Scarborough had an affair with his intern and she was found dead in his office. Via Steemit, the curious case of the death of Joe Scarborough's intern, Lori Klausustis, with recent attacks on President Donald Trump and accusations of threats of blackmail by Joe Scarborough and Micah Brzezinski, the daughter of the co-founder of the Trilateral Commission, Zbigniew Brzezinski. Some information about Scarborough's past has come to surface. No matter what you believe about the exchange between Trump and the two MSNBC hosts, the following information is more important than allegations of behavior between the two because it involves the death of a young intern, Lori Klausustis, and the subsequent cover-up. I won't be looking at the speculation of any of the drama. I draw no bias to either side on conclusion until evidence is presented. Instead, I'll be examining the case of Klausustis, who was found dead in Scarborough's Fort Walton Beach office. Scarborough used to serve as a U.S. Republican congressman from Florida's 1st District from 1995 to 2001. He shortly resigned 5 months into his 4th term in September of 2001. 2 months before his resignation on July 20th, 2001, his intern, Lori Klausustis, was found dead inside his office on his floor. Her body was discovered by a couple who wanted to speak to Klausustis about a work permit issue they had. However, the once respected news agency, CNN, reported that Scarborough was set to resign as early as May of 2001. So the death of his aide probably didn't have anything to do with his resignation. Scarborough's office released the following press release on Klausustis' death. "My staff and family are greatly saddened by the loss of Lori Klausustis. I know Lori will be missed by the thousands of citizens who regularly contact my office to seek assistance with a variety of problems. May God grant Lori's family the grace, comfort, and hope that will get them through this difficult time," Scarborough's office said. Scarborough claimed that he had resigned in order to spend more time with his children. In the last month or two, I've had thousands of different rumors launched against me. I'd rather keep this private right now, he added. The story of the death of Klaus Ustis was swept under the rug and was barely covered by the media, perhaps because 2 months later on, September 11th, the largest terrorist attack on American soil occurred, or maybe the media didn't see significance in covering. Fort Walton Beach Police Chief Steve Hogue said the preliminary findings from the medical examiner's office of Dr. Michael Birkeland showed no foul play or any outward indication of suicide. So how did Klaus Ustis die then? The official autopsy report stated her death was an accident attributed to undiagnosed cardiac arrhythmia, and due to this fact, her breathing stopped. She fell and hit her head on an office desk and died, Birkeland said. Scarborough's press secretary, Miguel Serrano, also stated that Klaus Ustis had known prior health conditions, but didn't provide specifics when questioned. And Scarborough himself told reporters that she had a complicated medical history, including stroke and epilepsy, which an immediate family member disputed. And denied, stating she had no prior health conditions, since she was a documented marathon runner who had recently run an 8K with a respectable time, and she belonged to the Northwest Florida Track Club. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. On August 29th of 2001, two Fort Walton Beach police officers, Stephen Sequiera and crime scene expert Dusty Rhodes, who witnessed the autopsy of Klaus Ustis, said that her skull had been fractured, reported NWF Daily News. But this was never taken into account in the final autopsy report, and Dr. Birkeland stated knowledge of the injury was significant and was simply just from the cause of her fall. We know for a fact she wasn't whacked in the head because of the nature of the injury, Birkeland said, downplaying the woman's injury. Then on September 1st of 2001, Dr. Birkeland released the autopsy report of Klaus Ustin's death at an 18-page document stating he wanted to extinguish the fires of speculation surrounding the case. Reiterating his previous claims, the report stated that Klaus Ustis had died from striking her head on the edge of the desk in the office. The fall that caused her to strike the desk, was likely triggered by an undiagnosed heart condition known as floppy mitral valve disease, which is typically marked by abnormal heart rhythms. Birkeland noted his report was backed up by two people, including a postal worker and co-worker of Klaus Ustis, a woman identified as Tiffany Bates. Both said she told them she was anxious and did not feel quite right prior to her death. There was no sign of a break-in or struggle. However, a security guard, Don Graham, owner of D-Train Security Company, stated that he may have missed checking to see if the doors at Scarborough's office were locked. Scarborough himself has an alibi. He was in Washington at the time of her death, according to a report by the Pensacola News-Journal. Despite these facts, several questions remain as Dennis Wright and Chris George, AMPOL, American Political Journal, pointed out. Were Laurie's medical records thoroughly examined for any evidence of the pre-existing heart condition? It would seem that someone must have examined her heart if she ran 8 miles, 8 Ks. 2. Did Dr. Birkeland personally examine the site of death in undisturbed condition in order to support his later conclusion that the physical evidence was compatible with his later conclusions? 3. Presumably the heart valve condition alluded to is mitral valve prolapse. This may be associated with a rhymius, but rarely with V-tach, ventricular tachycardia, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm not too good at this, or V-fib, ventricular fibrillation. The only arrhythmias which would stop the flow of blood to the brain. Okay. Number 4, if Lori's death was just a simple accident, then why did Representative Scarborough and his spokesman Miguel Serrano feel the need to go to 2 different local TV stations within 3 hours of her body being found and invent a non-existent history of chronic medical conditions for her? In other words, why did they feel the need to lie about Lori's health? 5, would you trust without question the word of a medical examiner who lost his medical license in 2 separate states, Missouri and Florida, because he lied about his autopsy work? For instance, saying he had autopsied some brains when he hadn't? Oh, God. 6, why should whoever wrote Miss Klaus-Sustis' obituary feel it was appropriate to mention nearly everything about her life except where she'd been working since 1999? 7, Dr. Birkeland and his supervisor at the time, Dr. Gary Cumberland, were known to be high-giving donors to Scarborough's congressional campaigns. Did their relationship with Scarborough influence any and all the results issued by the ME's office? Curiosity also piques when you learn medical examiner Dr. Birkeland's medical license in the state of Missouri was revoked in 1998 as a result of him reporting false information regarding brain tissue samples in a 1996 autopsy report. He moved to Florida in 1997, and in July of 1996, Birkeland was suspended from his position as medical examiner in the state of Florida. Yet in 2001, he was issuing reports on Klaus-Sustin's death that were questionable, if not outright false. He was then fired in 2003 for not completing autopsy reports. Further, the man was arrested in 2012 for storing human body parts in a Florida storage unit in containers filled with formaldehyde and methyl alcohol. Birkeland was charged with improper storage of hazardous waste, keeping a public nuisance, and driving with a suspended license, according to CBS News. Which not only does Birkeland's work ethic come into question whether he was competent enough for the autopsy, but also the man's sanity, keeping remains of deceased humans. Why would anyone do that? Organ trafficking? But that's a story for another day. Back to the death of Klaus-Sustis. Knowing this medical examiner's shady history, you may find it interesting that the autopsy of Klaus-Sustis makes no reference to the time of death according to a now deleted copy of the autopsy report. Then there is Scarborough's alleged odd behavior on a radio show years later after Klaus-Sustis' death in 2003. On May 29, 2003, Scarborough appeared on Don Imus's radio show where he made the shocking admission about killing his intern. While complimenting Scarborough on his sense of humor, Imus said, "Don't be afraid to be funny because you are funny. I asked you why you aren't in Congress. You said that you had sex with the intern and then you had to kill her." Scarborough laughed and replied, "Yeah, well, what are you gonna do?" The audio from the only known recorded upload is curiously missing. And the page for the archive.org page is also dead. However, I was able to dig up the oldest date of existence for this claim from 2004 from the Democrats' own website. If true, this is a tasteless joke that, had it been made today, would have instantly gotten the attention of social media and ruined both men's careers. Author and filmmaker Michael Moore also accused Scarborough of killing his intern when he registered the domain name Joe Scarborough killed his intern.com and was later sued for his action. I'll let you draw your own conclusions by the amount of information provided herein. In no way am I personally suggesting that Scarborough killed his intern. In fact, someone of his stature would have that job done for him. I am simply stating that her death is suspicious, in my opinion, and many things don't add up. And it doesn't add up, not at all. Absolutely, it doesn't add up. And the doctor, the medical examiner, seems corrupt. And you see, I mean, this is like just unbelievable. Unbelievable. I just can't. Oh, we're not finished with it. I'm sorry. Lori Klausustis was found behind a desk by two people visiting the congressman's district office in July of 2001. An autopsy report found that she had been feeling unwell and heart problems caused her to fall on her desk and hit her head. The medical examiner did not find signs of foul play, but still considers the case as cold. Scarborough announced his resignation months prior to her death, just 5 months into his 4th term, saying he wanted to spend more time with his children. Joe Scarborough and Micah Brzezinski, who co-host The Morning Joe on MSNBC together, have taken it upon themselves to attack President Donald Trump savagely on a day-to-day basis. But this wasn't always the case. They propped him up until he won the primaries. Once it was between Trump and Hillary, they switched gears and started ripping Trump a new one each and every day. They probably thought he would be the easiest for crooked Hillary to beat. Okay. No, but it's very suspicious, you know. Very suspicious. Well, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And again, thank you so much for watching.